You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. 12 Newsmakers starts now.
Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. In the messy world of politics, the Hamilton County Republican Party is a wonder to behold. Like a grand chess master, local Republicans always appear to be thinking 12 to 15 moves into the future. Meanwhile, local Democrats scramble around trying to find the rules to their checkers game. But no matter how much the Republicans appear to be a well-oiled machine, put 3 or 4 Republicans of any persuasion, three or four politicians of any persuasion in the same room, and they will compete among themselves. What's interesting is that in the last month, the local Republicans have not only competed and fought among themselves, but those fights have broken out in public. The spark is a classic case of beware of getting what you wish for. The immediate trigger for this struggle is the impact of term limits. 8 years after voters adopted term limits, it is finally going into effect. Locally, that means 5 Hamilton County members of the State House of Representatives must leave their offices. Besides Democrat Jerry Lubers in the 33rd District, 4 Republicans, Dale Van Viven in the 32nd, Cheryl Winkler in the 34th, Robert Schuler in the 36th, and Jackie O'Brien in the 37th District are all forced out. That sudden wealth of vacancies set off a land rush of potential Republican candidates. The party leadership tried to process this embarrassment of riches in a businesslike, rational, and orderly fashion. But democracy is not businesslike or orderly. A contingent of party activists calling for candidates with strict pro-life, anti-abortion, and anti-tax positions, led by Chris Finney and Tom Brinkman, under the banner of the Family Alliance, vowed to mount primary fights in at least 3 races. In the 32nd, party-endorsed Tawana Keel-Simons will be challenged by Jim Rawson. In the 36th, Michelle Glass-Schneider, the mayor of Madeira, will face a challenge from Charles Tassel. And in what promised to be the most high-profile and maybe most interesting race is in the 37th District, where Steve Adams, an assistant county prosecutor, will face Tom Brinkman, who has been the bulldog for the party when it challenged signatures for the proposal to reform Cincinnati city government 18 months ago, and is regularly out in front fighting taxes and a regular guest on this show. And make no mistake, the Hamilton County Republican Party is the cornerstone of the state party, which controls every statewide office. The health of this party is essential as we head into the presidential election year, certainly from the Republican point of view. The intensity of the struggle became clear when Party Chairman H.C. Buck Niehoff resigned 2 weeks ago. Longtime county prosecutor, current state treasurer, and prospective future gubernatorial candidate Joe Deters agreed to bilocate between Columbus and Cincinnati and serve as the Hamilton County chairman as well as the state treasurer. This morning, Joe Deters is joining me here on Newsmakers to shed a little light on this.
A governor's candidate now. I got that role.
I've heard it.
Well,
you've heard it.
Well,
yeah.
We'll see.
You know those 12 moves out?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what you guys do, you know? Commissioner to city council.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, you may not want to. No, you don't say anything about publicly. I know that. I wouldn't ask you about that. I can say it though.
You can,
Joe.
that's what you guys do best.
That's what we do best.
Yeah.
We make things up. Joe, why you? This county Republican Party has huge amounts of talent, has long traditions of leadership. Why you? You're in Columbus right now, as state treasurer. What?
Well, I've been very active in the party, and I was chairman of the executive committee, very involved in the grassroots of the Hamilton County Republican Party. This is the party that got me where I am. In 1988, they took a chance on a 31-year-old to run for clerk of courts, and we have a little bit of problem right now. And it's one of unity.
What is the problem? Now, I set it up. I don't know if that's fair. I'm not inside the party. What is the problem as you would define it?
Well, I think it's a little overblown. First of all of these people involved in this little mini struggle are good Republicans. There's differing views on what politics really is. Some involved think politics is more like a religion, and if you're not with them on certain issues, you can't be in the party. I happen to be a little bit more pragmatic and believe that we have to be a big tent. We have to be very inclusive in order to win elections, in order to govern. I think the overriding reason why I did this was really for the good of the party. And as I said, this isn't my ultimate career goal, and notwithstanding your earlier predictions, I don't know ultimately where I'll be. But it's something that I thought I could do in the short term. Rob Portman, Congressman Portman, who this area is blessed to have, a good friend of mine, has agreed to serve as vice chair, and together we're going to guide the party through a tough election period coming this November.
Okay, you said, and this is true going into any primary, and people always need to remember that, primaries are for parties to figure out who their endorsed candidates will be. Why not just have an open primary? Why does the party leadership have to say, this is the person, and then
right. Well,
and then freeze out these other
Buck
people?
Niehoff, who, by the way, is just a terrific guy and did a fine job as chair. And Buck decided to do an endorsement process. We had, for instance, in the 37th district, we had 27 candidates who were running. And as a student of political science like you are, you know that in a scenario like that, the costs involved and the potential of, frankly, someone pulling in maybe 18 or 19% of the vote and winning a seat who is possibly an extremist or someone who doesn't reflect party values can happen. So I think the process, although I have to deal with the hand I've been dealt right now with our endorsed candidates who are all fine, and it's also important, these people, men and women, the gentlemen, are very conservative. By any rational standard, they're very conservative. But there are those
You mean the party's endorsed candidates?
right.
Okay.
The party's endorsed candidates, by any rational standard, would be considered conservative.
So
But-
what's their problem?
Well, I think the problem is simply it's about control and power. It's not ideological at all. The Hamilton County Republican Party is strong, it's vibrant. The Finance Committee is engaged. They are actively out getting our message to the people. And I think at the end of the day, we're going to be just fine. And we'll look back on this in December, have me back in December, by the way, and we'll say, well, I guess this was a little overblown.
What about, is this really just the latest outbreak of what those of us who watch politics, just the latest eruption from earlier in the decade of the platform Republican issue?
It's a bit more, I think it's a bit different than that. I think there was an objection, and some would argue legitimate objection to the endorsement process.
And what is that objection? And if you had to do the endorsement process over, if you had been party chair, I don't know, 6 months ago, how would you have done it? What could have been done?
Well, I think it's just I think the problem they have with the endorsement process is that some of the people they liked weren't endorsed. I don't know that there's anything wrong with the endorsement process. We're reaching out, though, and we're really trying to include a lot of these groups. But I will not be a chairman that says that you are not a pro-life candidate if you have any exceptions for abortion. Some of the groups engaged, who I've got a great deal of respect for, and I think their heart is in the right place, cannot even support Steve Shabbat anymore because Steve has an exception for the life of the mother. Now, who, by any rational standard, could not say Steve Shabbat is a true conservative? Even in this Republican Congress, Steve is seen as a very conservative guy.
As a former teacher of Steve Shabbat, I can assure you he's
very conservative.
He's a conservative.
He's very conservative.
Okay, anti-abortion, and we know that that's an issue that's just been out there since '73 and just keeps getting sliced.
But Dan, I'm pro-life, and this is an area where our candidates, who are endorsed by the party, are, by any rational standard, pro-life. For instance, in the 37th district, Steve Adams is pro-life. Steve Adams has only
from the
one
county prosecutor's office.
He's an assistant county prosecutor, now in the treasurer's office as a field representative. But Steve Adams believes that is pro-life, but has an exception for the life of the mother. Tom Brinkman has no exception for the life of the mother. That's how far on the scale we're dealing with and where that exists.
Let's talk one of the other, pro-life and pro-family kind of get mixed up together a little bit there. But let's talk about this anti-tax issue. Tom Brinkman, certainly, Chris Finney.
Both good guys.
Yeah.
Both good guys.
Yeah. When it comes to taxes, though, and I certainly am not going to put words in their mouths, but
they can do
I
that.
think they would say that the local Republican Party has gone too far in supporting taxes and not been aggressive enough. That the establishment party, in supporting the sales tax, in a good economic time, not rolling back other taxes, they would argue that the Republican Party, which ought to be committed to anti-tax or low tax, or however one wants to put it, that the local Republicans and even the state under Voinovich, they did not take the Republican approach to taxes. Now, is that sort of a clear split?
I don't know. I think Governor Taft and Senator Voinovich, when he was governor, as I go through Ohio as the treasurer, it is very evident to me that they reflect Ohio values. The fervor in Hamilton County, that anti-tax fervor, is a very parochial thing. It is not reflective of the Republican Party throughout the rest of the state.
So you say Hamilton County Republicans, not just on the fringe, which are the extreme, I don't want to call it fringe, on the extreme, but just generally is much more anti-tax than statewide Republicans?
No, there's no question about that.
Because the local Republican Party has passed and supported too many taxes?
Well, I don't know if that's the case. You know, the local Republican Party many times gets pulled into issues involving the schools. There's great business interest in educating the workforce. And, you know, on the sales tax issue, I mean, I think this is going to be a big issue next year. That passed overwhelmingly in Hamilton County. The people voted for that.
Let's talk about where that's going to be an issue, and that's in the commissioner's race. Bob Bettinghouse, who was the out front person on the sales tax and on the riverfront, putting the two stadiums on the riverfront, has consistently been the out front person, is now up for re-election. He won the first time out. He's now have to stand for re-election. That's going to be a hot race. And one possibility is that Dusty Rhodes, who's well-known, run county-wide already, challenges Bob Bettinghouse. What's it going to cost the Republican Party to keep Bob Bettinghouse in office this year?
Well, you know, Bob is experiencing what other people who get out in front on any issue experience. The number of people who today...
Buyer's remorse?
Well, the number of people today, if you poll, that will admit they voted for the sales tax. It's like, you know, the old joke of how many Germans admitted they were Nazis after the war. They they don't exist anymore.
How many people said they voted for Richard Nixon by 75? You couldn't find any of them.
That's true. But I think, and one of our old party fathers, Gene Ruhlman, experienced these same slings and arrows when he was building Riverfront Stadium. And I remember Tom Lucan standing up saying, this is a mistake, and Gene Ruhlman is bringing the city down, and look what it did. If that stadium
Okay, let's not argue the piece. We're here to talk about politics now. What's the party going to have to invest in the Bettinghouse race to make that one work?
I think
if it's Dusty.
Oh, I think it's $1 million race.
Okay, it's $1 million campaign.
I don't have any doubt about it, and I think that the Republican Party is going to step up and do it. But let me say this about Dusty, who's a friend of mine.
Right.
Dusty, I think the county enjoys the Republicans running it, generally.
Enjoys it?
Well,
okay.
I think,
that's interesting. Go
well,
ahead.
I think that they have profited from Republican rule in Hamilton County, and I think they like Dusty as auditor. I think they like the play there. I don't believe that the county is ready to turn over the government to the Democrats. I just don't believe it.
Let's talk about the other race. John Dallin is also up. The other three commissioners, two of them are up this time. The last Democratic commissioner, if I remember correctly as a historian, 1963. I have no memory of the last time there were two Democratic commissioners in this county. But
I remember a Democratic sheriff.
Yeah, right. And that was, it had a different dynamic to it. The John Dallin, is John Dallin going to run again? And is the party going to support him?
He's the endorsed candidate. I believe he is going to run again. I haven't talked to
There's
John.
been all kinds of rumors that the party leadership would like to move John Dallin aside.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Is he weak? Is he vulnerable?
I think both commissioners are vulnerable. There's no question about that. But you know, it's typical campaign season.
Is it because he supported Broadway Commons when the rest of the mainstream of the party supported the river?
Well, I think there are a variety of issues where John took an alternative view to where a large number of the Finance Committee was in the Republican Party. And John's difficulty is not, I don't think it's going to be his message, his difficulty is going to be in raising money. And if you can't raise money in today's political world, you got problems. Now, but I will say this, I plan, you know, this morning, Sunday, I hope this week we can meet and talk about what John wants to do.
Is it his opponent could very possibly be Jerry Lubbers, who is forced out of the House of Representatives? Lots of rumors about Jerry Lubbers as a longtime Democrat. You know, I mean, when you talk about ideological scale, he's probably closer to a lot of the Republicans. Any interest in picking Jerry Lubbers off from the Democratic Party and making him a Republican?
Well, Jerry knows, and I hope Jerry's watching this today.
I've
tried to do that for 10 years. I tried to get Jerry to change parties for 10 years.
And let's be honest, parties think about that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Jerry, listen, Jerry carried Right to Life's ball in the state legislature for a long time. And Jerry Lubbers comes from an old Democratic family, you know, much like my mom's family, the Tehan family. And I think it's a personal issue with Jerry. There's no question ideologically Jerry's more, I think, closer to the core of the Republican Party than the Democratic Party.
Unfortunately, Joe, I'm out of time.
Okay.
And, you know, as you make these trips back and forth, I'm going to try to catch you on this end of the orbit occasionally.
Or come to Columbus and see me.
Yeah, I'll come to Columbus and see you. But, you know, at least straightforward talk. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay tuned. The Bengals have sold out about 42,000 seat licenses for the new Paul Brown Stadium next year. That leaves almost 24,000 empty seats. Maybe the Bengals need to take some lessons from the folks in town who really know how to sell season tickets. Welcome back. The common wisdom is that if cities, especially older cities, are looking for one thing that will heighten their profile and act as an economic development driver, the answer is professional sports. That's why Cincinnati scrambled to save the Bengals by voting tax money to build a new stadium. But sometimes the common wisdom blinds us to reality. Last Sunday, Jackie Demaline, in the Cincinnati Enquirer column, challenged that common wisdom. I invited Jackie to be with me this morning on Newsmakers. Jackie is the theater critic and roving arts reporter for the Cincinnati Enquirer. At least that's what it says at the bottom of your column. And it sounds like a fun roving arts reporter. That sounds fun. And Jackie and I have talked a number of times in the past about other things, but welcome to Newsmakers. I think this is your first time here.
It is. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Yes. And to you too. Tell me, let's start with what the basics are here. Theater in this city right now seems pretty healthy. Is that the way is that the point you were trying to make? Or the first point you were trying to make?
That's yeah. The theater is healthy. The arts are pretty darn healthy right now, which is terrific. I mean, it's been an evolutionary process, I think, during the '90s. But boy, we are seeing it now. We are absolutely seeing it now.
You were citing in particularly the Playhouse in the Park, which is, I think, what is it? 92% subscribed at this point?
No.
Not that big?
No, not that much at all.
Those of us who are subscription, we like to believe it, but it's awfully big.
It's solid. It's solid. They've had to add performances to accommodate.
The Shakespeare Festival, which is relatively new, but is doing very well.
Doing very nicely.
The Broadway series at the Aronoff.
Nice, big numbers, doing reasonably.
Okay, we'll come back to that. And did you include the ensemble?
Ensemble Theater, CC College Conservatory of Music.
Okay, and altogether you found 46,000 season tickets.
Correct.
And the point here is, those people, from an economic driver point of view, those people who go to Broadway or to the Playhouse in the Park or to Shakespeare, do they usually do other things too when they go to those theaters? Because that's what's always talked about with sports.
Sure, of course they do, and there's also not a lot of crossover, I think, between many of them. I mean, someone who will go to the Playhouse is not necessarily who you're going to find at the Broadway series. Right. So, even if you were going to look at a 10% crossover, it would still be more than 40,000 people who are making long-term commitment rather than a one-shot buy to going to theater long-term during a year.
Okay, so lots of people making long-term commitment, probably going out, lots of them going out to supper.
Lots of them.
Before and after, so feeding and fueling the other sorts of things in town. Let's talk a little bit about Broadway, the Broadway series at the Aronoff. Am I correct? I'm a Playhouse in the Park person, a Shakespeare Festival person, and not a Broadway person, just not my kind of theater. But am I correct that the number of nights that theater is lit is gone down since it first opened? That
sure, of course you are.
They haven't delivered exactly what they said they were going to deliver?
Oh, no. Read the contract. Read the contract. What they did was they opened big, and they were there 24, 25 weeks a year. That was nowhere near the contract. They are meeting their contractual obligation.
How many weeks a year are they now?
12.
They're open 12.
Well, they're committed to 12, and usually they do 14 or 15.
And how many were they doing when they were at the Taft?
Bear in mind that they doubled the length of the show time. So at the Taft, they were doing 1 week stops, and maybe doing 8-9 weeks a year, which would be six subscriptions plus 2 or 3 specials. And now those 6 weeks have become 12. They simply doubled the length of each run, and then again maybe add any specials during engagements during the year that they feel will sell.
Okay. So they have boosted from where they were at the Taft, but they have fallen back from where they were that first year.
Of course.
And that's not unusual for any
Absolutely not.
institution.
I mean, they wisely, I think, thought that there would be great interest in the new Aronoff Center and scheduled accordingly. And it also has to do with what can tour.
You were mentioning before that the arts in the city are generally in good shape. Last year, now really it's probably 2 years ago, a regional arts study was created, a Regional Cultural Planning Commission study was created. They created a report that was reported out last spring. Where is that?
There is currently a Regional Cultural Alliance in the making. And
it's been in the making.
It's been in the making, but the current best plan is that they're hoping to have funding in place to hire an executive director midway through 2000.
Is that real?
Yeah, it is. It has to be real.
Why does it have to be real?
It has to be real because there is while there is no vacuum in the arts, there is a vacuum at the top in bringing arts to the table politically in Cincinnati, and the only way it's going to get there is by having a person who is there and making the case for the arts.
Well, you say bringing arts to the table, the political table.
Absolutely, the political table.
Last week at City Council, or 10 days ago at City Council, people started proposing budget cuts. The first thing that started to be proposed was a city commitment to a number of the arts and cultural, and not just the performing arts, but the cultural organizations in town. Is that what's going to happen? Are the arts the first thing that always get cut?
Not if the case is made. It's interesting. A couple of years ago, I'm going to say it's Money Magazine, but an economist made a case for cities now being urban theme parks, or the best way to proceed with a city as being an urban theme park. And if you look at a city like Denver, you will look around. What you will not see is a department store. You will see a multiplex cinema. You will see a free connector that goes a mile long that ends very close to Coors Field and passes several theaters along the way, and several restaurants. Where there is disposable income, there is entertainment. And if you wanted to take that one step further, you could say, now that they're talking about the banks on the riverfront, they're talking about convention center expansion. What do those people do at 5 p.m.? They've finished convening. They've gone home from work. What do? Entertain them.
I have less than 30 seconds. We've been talking about the strength of the arts. What's the cultural arts organization right now that you're most worried about?
Most worried about? Actually, I'm amazed. I'm not worried about anybody.
Well, there you go. A Christmas message, a New Year's message from Jackie Demaline. Okay, thank you for joining us, and we'll come back because the arts is an important thing to keep coming back to, and that's where I live most of my world. Okay, thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the men and the women who are shaping our region for the future.